Alright guys, so here's the review of the Venezianico Nereide Avventurina. Apologies if you're Italian because I probably butchered that, but as you probably guessed, this is an Italian brand. So I've checked out one of their watches previously, although I think it was a while back now. If you haven't seen that one, I've actually got it in the watch roll down here. I'll leave a link to that up in the top if you want to check it out. But getting back to this one, you can see we've got a couple of boxes here. That's because we've got a couple of different things going on. But we'll get into this as we get into the review. So I'll pop this one to one side for a second, and we'll talk about that later. I'll also move the watch out of the way and I'll briefly show you the packaging as well, in case you haven't seen the packaging they used before. So we've got the branding on the front there. Quickly slide this off. And then the watch would obviously be in there. The only thing you've got in the box is all the paperwork and everything in the top. Nicely held in there. But we'll get all this out of the way and we'll get right down to it. And here it is. So, as you'd probably already figured out, yep, we've got an Avventurina dial on this. We've also got that really interesting bezel as well, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Before we go into any more detail on the dial and all that kind of stuff though, first of all, let's go over the dimensions. So, we've got a diameter of 42mm, thickness of 12.4, lug width of 22, then the all-important lug to lug is coming in at 48.7. Then when it comes to the weight, you can either get it with this rubber strap or you can get it on a bracelet. The weight on this rubber strap is coming in at 118 grams, and that's what you actually get if you buy the watch. You have to pay extra for the bracelet, and that's going to cost you €85, £72, about $91. I've actually got one of them as well, so I'll show you that briefly now. So this is the packaging you'll get it in, just slides out, and you can see we've got a pretty nice bracelet here. So we've got a mixture of brushed and polished, with the polished centre links, brushed outer, and then we've got the branding on there, on the clasp. It is just a butterfly clasp, not my favourite, and then we've just got push pins as well. But as I say, I'll show you this on the watch later on. Getting back to the strap though, I'll show you that now in a bit more detail, and we'll talk about it. So we've got the branding there on the keeper at the top, and then we've also got the logo on that buckle. It's just a brushed buckle, nothing too fancy, and then we've got the two keepers. When it comes to the rest of the strap, it's actually a really nice strap. So it's an Italian made strap, and it is a rubber one. Got a few different finishes on there. And then we've got the branding on the back again, and it is a fitted strap, which is nice. I definitely wouldn't have liked it as much if it had been a flat end one. And then when it comes to the case back, we've got a nice interesting design on this. And you can also see as well, we've actually got screws, not a screwed down case back. And then we've got the usual kind of specs around the outside. So the brand name at the top. And then we've also got the fact that it's a Swiss movement, so we'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a bit. Then 200 meter water resistance, and the fact that it's an automatic movement as well. It's all really nicely done and does look good. Now moving on to the head of the watch, you can see we've got some really nice curvature to those lugs, so it does help conform to wrist nicely. And then the curvature of the strap matches that perfectly as well. And then in between those crown guards we've got that nice signed crown with the logo again. When it comes to the finishing, you can see it's fully brushed, then we've got some polished chamfer details. And then we've got that nice flat crystal there. We've also got some nice detailing on that bezel too. But we've talked about the rest of the watch enough. You probably want to see the main event with this, and that's the dial. So let's get on to that now. And here it is. So it is a really good looking dial, as you'd expect with it being a Avventurina. But there is more going on than just that. So we'll get a zoom in, and we'll talk about it in more detail. So we've got applied indices, an applied logo. Then we've got the printed branding underneath the logo. And then the model number at the bottom, and the fact that we've got the Avventurina dial. We've also got that date window at the 3, with that silver frame around it, and when it comes to the indices, you can see they are actually faceted, so they catch the light really nicely as well. It's just a really, well, I guess really blingy kind of dial, overall, which might put some people off, but others are going to love. I'm personally not normally a fan of that kind of thing. I'm not a flashy person by nature, as you've probably figured out from watching the channel. But I think this is done tastefully. I think it's quite classy looking. It's not overly in your face. When it comes to the hands, we've got a nice high polish on them as well. I do think they might be slightly short. Like I'd like to see the second hand touching the edge of that minute track, and then the hour hand just touching the inside of the hour markers maybe. But other than that, I think it's done pretty well. When it comes to the bezel, as you can tell, we've got a really interesting finish on this. So we've got that high polish, but it is actually tungsten. So it's a tungsten inlaid bezel. Not something I've seen before with that high polish like mirror finish, but I do think it looks good. Obviously it's going to gather fingerprints if you're going to be touching the top of it, but just using it, grabbing the side, it's not an issue. But now, let's check whether we've actually got sapphire crystal on this, using the trusty diamond selector tool. And yep, we have got sapphire crystal, so always good to see. So let's go into a bit more detail on this bezel now. So you know it's a tungsten inlay, but it's 120 click as well. So we've got a nice clicky action. Not really any backplay. It's fairly light, but not overly so. And then when it comes to the alignment, you can see on mine it is ever so slightly off. If I get a zoom in, you'd probably be able to see it a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. So ever so slightly off to the left, probably by about 1 mil. Now getting onto the movement, you know it's a Swiss movement, but what movement is it? So it's an SW200. So if we unscrew the crown, nice and grippy. Pop it out to the first position, you can change the date. Pop it out to the second one. Second hand stops, so we got hacking. Then we can just change the time. Pop it back in, second hand re-engages, and then we've also got hand winding as well. And then obviously we can just screw it back down. All works well, as you'd expect, with the SW200 movement. And it's also really nice that it's a high beat movement as well, so we get that nice smooth sweep of the second hand. So now it's time to check out what the loom's like on this. Is it going to be any good, or is that going to let it down? Let's find out now. So you can see we've got some there already, but let's charge it up, give it a proper chance. And there we go. So it's actually coming up slightly green on camera, but it is actually BGW9 we've got on here. So it's actually that ice blue. So it's nice and consistent across the hands and the indices and that loom pip as well. No patchiness at all, which is always good. And we've got a decent amount on there considering how thin the indices and hands are. So we'll speed this up a little bit now and see how it fares. So as you'd expect, the first thing to go is going to be the loom on that second hand because there just isn't that much surface area there. But everything else is hanging on pretty well so far. No discrepancy between the hands and the indices, lasting the same amount of time. They do eventually start to fade as we get close to this 5-minute mark. They've faded a little bit, but not too much. So definitely usable loom. So you're probably wondering now, how much is all this going to cost you? So it's €779, £665, $836. So now I'll show you what it's like on the strap on the bracelet, starting with the bracelet. And here it is on my 7-inch wrist. And it does wear really nicely. Really soft, comfortable strap. No breaking period at all. I personally think this suits the watch better than the bracelet. I think it breaks up what is a fairly shiny, reflective watch otherwise. When it comes to the lugs, nice curvature as I said, and nice compact look to lug, so it wears nicely on wrist. I do really like this tungsten bezel. I've not seen a mirror finished tungsten bezel on a watch before. Definitely something different. And obviously you get a lot of light play from that and that aventurine dial. But you also get it from the faceted indices as well. So a lot of different surfaces to catch the light and play with it. But now I'll show you what it's like on the bracelet and you can see how much that changes the overall look of it. So here it is on the bracelet. It does look good still, but as I say, personally I've been wearing it more on the strap. I just prefer it on that. So when it comes to the bracelet, we've got the nice mixture of finishes, brushed and polished. Got the logo on there. But it is only a butterfly clasp. So sizing might be an issue for you. You might not be able to get the perfect fit because of that. So it's something to be aware of. But it all works well enough. Can't fault the finishing on it or anything. Just personally I would have preferred if they'd had a standard milled clasp. Or maybe even something with some on-the-fly adjustment. That would have been really good. Take it to another level, I think. Another thing to bear in mind is that these links on the end do actually stick out slightly longer than the lugs. But they do drop down pretty much straight away. So it only adds a few more mil. And again, if you do want this bracelet, that is an extra you've got to buy. It doesn't come with the watch. So again, €85, about £72, about $91. I'm normally a guy, if there's a bracelet option, I'll tend to go with that. But as I've said a few times now, I definitely think the rubber strap on this suits the watch better. And there are a couple of little things that would change with that bracelet, mainly that butterfly clasp. So I think I'd probably just be going with this strap. It is a really nice rubber one, and as I say, made in Italy. So if you are still interested in picking one up, Link is down in the description as always, but if this one doesn't do it for you, but you are interested in an Avventurina dial watch, I've actually reviewed another one, so I'll leave a link to that at the end if you want to check that one out. But that's it for this one guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.